Imagine standing in the center of an arena, thousands of eyes watching, chanting for your death. The air reeks of sweat, blood, and fear, and then from the darkness the gates creak open. Out steps a lion, its golden eyes fixed on you, followed by a roaring bear, both hungry, both furious. This wasn't a battle you could win. It wasn't even meant to be. In the Middle Ages, some punishments weren't about justice, they were about spectacle. And for the condemned, there was no escape from the claws and teeth of death by wild beasts. The year was 1237, and in a thriving medieval city, punishment wasn't always about gallows on the square or whips on a prisoner's back. Sometimes the rulers of men looked to the past, borrowing from the bloody traditions of Rome. They resurrected a forgotten terror, an execution not by blade or rope, but by the claws and teeth of wild beasts. Few punishments struck more fear into the heart of common folk, and when it happened, it drew the whole city together like moths to flame. On this day, that ancient cruelty returned. The city's amphitheater, once used for jousts and festivals, was alive with energy. From the lowest peasant to the wealthiest noble, everyone wanted to see the condemned man thrown to the beasts. Merchants lined the outer walls, selling roasted meat and mugs of spiced wine. Hawkers shouted, children ran underfoot, and the air buzzed with rumor. People claimed the prisoner had mocked the church, stolen from nobles, even denied the power of God. Whether the stories were true or not didn't matter anymore. His fate had already been sealed. Beneath the arena, Alaric sat shackled in a cold, damp cell. The stone walls closed around him, dripping with mildew, while the muffled roar of thousands seeped through the cracks above. His body ached from beatings. His wrists were rubbed raw from chains, and yet none of it compared to the dread twisting in his stomach. He had heard whispers from guards about his punishment. He had prayed it was just talk, but the sound of the beast's growls nearby left no doubt. His death would be a spectacle. Alaric wasn't an innocent man. He had stolen to survive, bread, coins, even a jeweled cup once, but he had never thought his life would end like this. To the rulers, though, he wasn't a man anymore. He was a message. The bishop himself had declared it. Heresy and theft demanded punishment that would etch fear into every heart. Mercy was weakness. A public death would keep others in line. In the animal pits, the handlers prodded restless lions with iron rods. Their snarls echoed, vibrating through the ground. A brown bear pawed at the bars of its cage, hungry and confused. These were not creatures of Europe. They had been brought from distant lands as trophies, caged for months until the day came when their power would be unleashed upon some unfortunate soul. Today, that soul was Alaric. Above, the crowd began to chant. Feet stomped against stone steps. Drums beat a steady rhythm, and the demand for blood grew louder. When the guards came for him, Alaric tried to resist, but they dragged him like a sack of grain. His bare feet scraped against the floor, and his chains clattered with every step. At the iron gate, sunlight poured through the cracks, blinding him. The trumpet blared, the crowd roared, and the gate groaned open. Alaric stumbled forward, thrown into the arena. The sand beneath his feet was hot and stained with old blood. He raised his head, squinting at the blinding light, and saw thousands of eyes fixed on him. For the crowd, he was no longer a man. He was entertainment. And somewhere in the shadows of the opposite gate, the beasts waited. The crowd's cheers had barely faded when the heavy chains on the opposite gate rattled. Every spectator leaned forward, breath caught in anticipation. Then, with a slow, grinding motion, the iron bars rose. From the darkness, a shape emerged. A lion, its mane golden in the sunlight, its body lean yet powerful from months of forced hunger. The animal's eyes locked instantly on Alaric, and the amphitheater erupted in screams of delight. Alaric froze, his body stiff with terror. He had never seen such a creature except in tapestries and half-told stories. In person, the beast was overwhelming. The lion's paws pressed into the sand with deliberate patience, its tail swishing like a pendulum, its teeth glinting beneath curled lips. It was no ordinary opponent. It was death on four legs. The instinct to survive jolted Alaric's body into motion. He turned and sprinted toward the arena wall, clawing at the smooth stone as if he could somehow scale it. The crowd laughed and jeered, some tossing bread crusts at him, others shouting for the beast to strike. To them, his panic wasn't tragedy. It was part of the entertainment. Behind him, the lion moved, muscles rippling under its tawny skin. It advanced slowly, savoring the chase the way a predator teases before it pounces. Alaric stumbled, his bare feet slipping on the hot sand. He looked back, heart pounding so hard he thought it might burst, only to see the lion closing in. Then came another sound, a deep, guttural growl from a second gate. The audience roared louder than ever as the bars lifted once again. This time a massive brown bear lumbered out, its size almost unreal. The bear sniffed the air, disoriented, before its eyes settled on Alaric. Forced from its cage, prodded and enraged, it swung its head back and forth, drool dripping from its jaws. 2 predators. 1 man. No escape. The crowd stood on their feet now. Nobles and peasants alike clapping, shouting, their voices merging into a wave of bloodthirsty noise. For them, this was theater. For Alaric, it was a nightmare from which waking was impossible. In desperation, he spotted a splintered piece of wood on the sand, perhaps a remnant of another execution. He snatched it up, gripping it like a spear. It was pitifully small, but in his mind it was better than nothing. The lion snarled, circling him. The bear huffed, dragging its claws through the dirt. The stench of animals and sweat filled his lungs. A swipe from the bear shattered the wooden shard in his hand, sending splinters flying. The force knocked him to the ground, sand burning his skin. He scrambled, coughing, eyes wild. Above him, nobles sipped wine, their lips curling in cruel smiles. They were not watching justice. They were watching a man's life dissolve into blood and sand, and as the lion crouched, ready to spring, Alaric realized the beasts weren't his only executioners. The crowd itself baying for death was part of the killing. The lion's muscles tightened, its body lowering into a hunter's crouch. The crowd hushed, thousands of eyes fixed on the single moment that would decide whether Alaric lived another heartbeat or not. Then with a burst of speed, the lion leapt. Alaric threw himself sideways, rolling across the sand as the beast's claws raked the ground where he had stood. Dust filled the air, and the amphitheater erupted in screams of excitement. The bear bellowed, rising on its hind legs, towering over man and lion alike. The sound was so loud it rattled Alaric's bones. Even the lion hesitated, snarling, tail thrashing in agitation. Alaric scrambled to his feet, his chest heaving, his arms scraped and bleeding. Every instinct screamed at him to keep moving, but the arena offered nowhere to run. The high walls loomed like prison bars, the gates sealed tight. The nobles watched with cold amusement. To them, Alaric was little more than a puppet dancing on the edge of death. Mothers covered their children's eyes only to peek through their own fingers, unable to look away. Vendors shouted, betting coin on which beast would land the first strike. This wasn't justice, it was gambling, sport theater soaked in cruelty. The lion struck again, swiping with its claws. One tore into Alaric's shoulder, ripping fabric and flesh alike. He cried out, stumbling back, his hands slick with blood. The bear growled, lunging forward, and for a terrifying moment, man and lion both dodged the massive weight of its strike. The sand exploded beneath the bear's paws. Alaric's mind raced. He grabbed a handful of sand and flung it at the lion's eyes. The animal roared, shaking its mane furiously, blinded for just an instant. The crowd gasped, surprised at his small act of defiance. A few even shouted encouragement, though most booed, wanting the beast to finish the job. For a heartbeat, Alaric felt the faintest glimmer of hope. Maybe he could keep dodging, keep fighting, maybe even survive long enough for the beasts to turn on each other. But the hope was fleeting. The bear slammed its paw into his chest, sending him sprawling against the dirt. His ribs ached. Breath knocked from his lungs. Above him, banners waved. Drums thundered again. The execution was becoming a story to tell, a memory etched in every witness. And as Alaric lay in the sand, blood dripping from his shoulder, he understood the cruel truth. This wasn't only about his death. It was about reminding everyone that power ruled here, and that defiance ended in blood and sand. Alaric staggered to his feet, his vision blurred from blood loss. His chest burned where the bear's paw had struck, each breath a jagged knife in his ribs, yet the arena gave him no pause. The crowd demanded more, and the beasts answered. The lion, shaking sand from its eyes, stalked in circles, tail lashing with fury. The bear huffed loudly, its bulk moving with surprising speed as it closed in. The 2 predators eyed one another now. Forced into the same pit, their instincts clashed. For a tense moment, Alaric wasn't the target. Each beast measured the other. The crowd roared louder, sensing the possibility of a greater spectacle. Not man against beast, but beast against beast. Some shouted for the lion, others for the bear, wagers flying like sparks in the air. Seizing that instant, Alaric crawled toward the broken shards of wood scattered on the sand. His fingers clutched one piece with a jagged point, hardly a weapon but sharp enough to give him hope. He turned just as the lion lunged again, its claws raking his leg. Pain seared through him, but adrenaline kept him moving. He thrust the shard forward, scraping against the lion's muzzle. The beast recoiled, more startled than harmed, and the crowd gasped at the daring strike. But his small victory didn't last. The bear roared, swiping its paw in a wide arc. Alaric ducked, but the force of air alone sent him crashing to the ground. He coughed, spitting blood, sand clinging to his face. Above, the nobles leaned forward, their jeweled hands gripping goblets tightly. They wanted the final blow. They wanted the story to end in a way that would echo for generations. Then it happened. The lion, angered by Alaric's defiance, turned not toward the man but toward the bear. With a furious snarl, it pounced. The two predators collided in a whirlwind of claws, teeth, and roars that shook the arena walls. Dust rose in choking clouds as they tore at each other, blood spattering across the sand. The crowd lost its mind, some cheering wildly, others screaming in shock. For Alaric, it was a fleeting chance. He dragged himself toward the wall, his wounded leg dragging behind him, his hand leaving streaks of blood in the dirt. He clawed at the stone, trying desperately to climb, but the walls were too high, too smooth. Every inch he gained slipped away beneath his trembling fingers. Behind him, the beasts clashed in fury, their battle drowning out the noise of the crowd. And as Alaric turned his head to watch, he realized something chilling. Whether the lion or the bear won, his fate remained the same. The clash of beasts shook the arena like thunder. The lion's mane was streaked with blood, its claws ripping into the bear's thick hide. The bear bellowed in fury, striking back with bone-crushing swipes, each blow powerful enough to send the lion sprawling. The crowd was on its feet now, a living storm of sound. Cheering, laughing, screaming, some even praying. For them it was the pinnacle of spectacle. For Alaric it was a reminder that his death had been designed not as justice but as theater. He pressed his palm against the wall, struggling to lift himself. His vision swam and his leg throbbed where the lion's claws had torn into him. Each attempt to climb only ended in failure, his body too broken to obey. Still he tried, driven by the stubborn ember of survival that refused to die. He clawed at the stone, nails tearing, teeth gritted, until at last he collapsed, gasping, the taste of iron thick in his mouth. Behind him, the beasts paused in their fight. Both were wounded, both enraged, their roars echoing in the open sky. Then, as if remembering their original prey, they turned their heads toward Alaric. The amphitheater fell into a tense hush. Even the gamblers and jeering nobles stopped to watch the final act. The lion moved first, circling low, its golden eyes locked on the broken man. The bear followed, lumbering with a guttural growl, its shadow looming over the sand. Alaric forced himself to sit up, his body trembling, his chest heaving. His eyes scanned the sea of faces above him. Some looked gleeful, others horrified, but none moved to stop what was about to happen. He realized, with a bitter twist of sorrow, that he wasn't dying alone. He was dying as a lesson. He whispered a prayer, not for salvation, but for courage. The crowd couldn't hear him, but in that final moment his words belonged not to them, not to the beasts, but to himself. If I must die, he rasped, let me die as a man. The lion lunged. Its weight crashed into him, claws sinking deep, teeth finding his throat. Pain seared through his body, a white-hot burst that stole his breath. He gasped once, twice, and then his cries were drowned beneath the roar of the crowd. The bear, maddened by the scent of blood, lunged as well, tearing at what remained, the sand turning crimson beneath them. The amphitheater erupted in ecstasy. People stamped their feet, nobles raised their goblets, and the bishop nodded with grim satisfaction. To them, the punishment had succeeded. Fear had been delivered. Order, for now, was restored. When the beasts were finally driven back by handlers with spears and torches, what remained of Alaric was unrecognizable. His body lay broken, scattered across the sand while the crowd slowly filed out, chattering about the spectacle they had witnessed. Some would tell the tale with awe, others with horror, but all would remember. And in that silence after the crowd departed, only the blood-stained sand remained, a mute witness to the cruelty of men, and the terrible truth that sometimes the beasts were not the animals in the pit, but the thousands who cheered above. And so, when the sand settled and the crowd dispersed, nothing was left of Alaric but silence and a crimson stain on the arena floor. His death had never been about guilt or innocence. It was about power, fear, and the dark hunger of a society that turned cruelty into entertainment. The beasts may have torn his body apart, but the true savagery lived in the hearts of those who cheered. History often remembers kings, bishops, and nobles, but it forgets men like Alaric, ordinary souls crushed beneath the weight of spectacle. Yet in remembering his story, we see a truth too easy to ignore. Sometimes the wildest beasts were never in the cages at all.